Chinese President Xi Jinping will be visiting Europe. There are many areas of common interest. China and the EU have become each other's second largest trading partner. Nearly $100 million worth of goods are flowing between them every hour. Both China and the European Union have vowed to uphold multilateralism and promote multipolarity in the global community. In their own different ways, China and the EU are trying to seek or preserve independence and autonomy in deciding their own policies. However, as President Xi embarks on his first visit to Europe in 5 years, he will be visiting a Europe divided between China and the US. In March 2023, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen gave the infamous de-risking from China speech, presented a moderate version of the decoupling policy the US pursued. Weeks later, French President Emmanuel Macron warned against reducing trade and diplomatic ties with China. And when German Chancellor Olaf Scholz visited Beijing the first time, he was criticized as putting Germany's business interests over EU's long-term strategic priorities. There's also the question of how close should the EU be following the US. Macron caused quite a stir last year by saying that France should not get caught up in the escalation between China and America. He said being an ally does not mean being a vessel, doesn't mean that we don't have the right to think for ourselves.
We developed a strategy to bolster our strategic autonomy and European sovereignty. We agreed to spend more on defense and to strengthen our industrial capabilities by investing more in our defense.
Europe can no longer leave its defense to the US. It is now up to us to take our own responsibility and to guarantee the safety and also therefore the sovereignty of the European Union.
As I speak to more and more European officials, business people, and experts on China-Europe relations, I see a common desire to look beyond this moment.
We want to engage. We want to listen. We want to understand. What we bring to the table is our capacity to listen and our capacity to actually try to find compromises in order for the global community to move forward.
I think we need, in some ways, also to see the EU-China relationship as an EU-China relationship and make sure that even though, of course, that relationship is influenced what happens in the China-US space, but also, insist that there are things that are unique to the EU-China relationship and maybe try to focus on them also.
What's unique? Well, here's one. Back in 2017, China and the European Union did something few expected: stand together on the opposite side to the United States. On June 1st, 2017, then US President Donald Trump announced his decision to pull the US out of the Paris Agreement.
The United States will withdraw from the Paris Climate Accord.
As the US made its announcement, China and the EU had already prepared to respond. The EU's Climate Commissioner Miguel Arias-Cañete told The Guardian that no one should be left behind. But the EU and China have decided to move forward. Our successful cooperation on issues like emissions trading and clean technologies are bearing fruit. Now is the time to further strengthen these ties to keep the wheels turning on ambitious global climate action. In a joint statement in 2018, China and the EU underscored their highest political commitment to the effective implementation of the deal. Saving the Paris Agreement didn't mean Europe was giving up on its old ally. It didn't mean it was suddenly best buddies with China, but it did signal that even within a difficult political climate, China and the EU could reach agreements on issues that matter to the long-term welfare of their people and the global community.
I think the strength of the relationship that's been built over the last decade or two, a very, very close engagement, both between policymakers and experts and civil society, puts us in good stead that I think that bilateral relationship will hold up to some extent. And that's really important because international cooperation can go one or two ways, and we really want relationships like the EU-China one to stay solid and lead to more progress.
Long-termism might sound lofty and vague, but that's the only way to keep the relationship between two sides that have different systems that are competing and disagreeing with each other away from the day-to-day political sway. Like the people I talked to said, China and Europe have to move forward.